Hi everyone, and welcome to a special episode of Not the Worsted Knitting Podcast. My name is Michelle, and I am the knitter and knitwear designer behind meeshyfrazz Knits. Today's the day. It's the day where if you like stats, if you like retrospectives, then this is your episode. Hi, Bagel. So today is the day where I am going to be going over all of my knits from 2024. I already broke down my projects, and so I've got some really fun stats. Also, I had to precariously place things all around me. So I've got my laptop over here with my Ravelry project pages. I've got my show notes right here where I've actually written all of my stats. And then in like 3 separate piles, I've got my garment knits here, my accessory knits here, and then my sock knits I had to put on the floor because I just didn't have any more room. But that is what we are going to be chatting about today. I love to do retrospectives, especially in the new year. I love to look back at everything I worked on. It's a good way to kind of see any trends that maybe I had that I wasn't expecting. When I do these breakdowns, it always surprises me just because I guess I might have expected that I would knit more in one category than another, or just different discoveries that I've made that I will chat about in this episode. So why don't we go ahead and get started. I'll also, for the garments, I will put them on so you can see what they're like, and then I'll pop up photos of what they look like on me. A lot of these, if you've been watching me for a while, then you will be familiar with most of these. Actually, you'll be familiar with all of these. So I have episodes where I've talked very in depth about each of these garments. So definitely take a look back at those if there's anything that you're interested in. And feel free to reach out to me if you want specific information. I can point you to a specific video, or I can just chat with you about any of the specifics. But I'll go over the garment. Well, I'll go over the knitted item, how much I've worn it, what yarn I used, how I liked the yarn, and if I like the finished object. So, and I'm going to start with, basically, we're starting at the beginning of 2024 and working our way down. So I will start with my first knit of 2024 all the way through to my last knit. So without further ado, why don't we get started with the trends? So the stats that I saw from the year, I think it's fun to start with the stats because they're always a little surprising. So my 2024 knitting retrospective. I had a total of 29 knitted items. The breakdown of that is 9 garments, and I'm saying a garment is a sweater, a cardigan, or a tee. 13 pairs of socks, 4 beanies, 2 cowls, and then 1 wrap or shawl. It's kind of like a wrap, but it's kind of in the wrap or shawl category. I worked with designs from 6 different designers. So all of the projects I worked on was a total of 6 different designers. The amount of knits designed by me was 21. Now, some of these were repeats, like multiple items. That surprised me. And I also had 3 secret projects. So those secret projects are in the stats, but I still can't really talk about what they are. Not until later this year. There were 13 total new designs from me that I worked on this year, as well as 10 published designs by me that I worked on this year. And then this was a really fun one that I decided to add that I wasn't expecting to be so high. I used 20 different yarn brands, and I thought that was really fun. And out of the 20 different yarn brands that I used, 14 of them were new to me this year, meaning that I had never knit with their yarn on a project previously. I did try to use a lot of different indie dyed yarns this year, and especially going to places like Fluff, you get a chance to see dyers that you wouldn't ordinarily see elsewhere. So I think that's been really helpful for me to kind of try all sorts of different yarns, as well as some bigger box yarns that I'd never tried before. So those are kind of my takeaway stats, and why don't we go ahead and start looking at the knits. All right, number 1 on the list is my Prismatic Reflection Sweater, the striped version that I am now wearing. All right, so this is what it looks like on. This was a design by me. This was actually my first garment design, and this is a top-down raglan. It has a very subtle slipped cable motif that is on the front, the sleeves, and the back, and then the raglan includes a slip stitch detail to mimic that. It's got a folded over neckband, and this is essentially made out of a DK weight yarn. So I marled 2 yarns together the entire time so that I could do striping that would be a little bit more subtle. I've chatted all about that, so I'm not going to go super in depth, but the yarns that I used. So the main yarn that I hold throughout is actually from Wool to Die For, and it's the Natural Fluff 4-ply, and it's basically just a really fluffy yarn. And then the white is Wool to Die For's Krypton sock, which is just a 75-25 merino nylon superwash sock base. And then the colors, all 3 of these colors are from Silly Goose Yarns. It's their Plump fingering line in Coral Reef, Bubblegum, and Ice Ice Baby. This has gotten a ton of wear. If you look closely, I think that's showing up okay. You can see that it's definitely done a sort of pilling effect, mostly on the sleeves, not really anywhere else on the body, but just the sleeves mainly. But it's not so bad that it's something I need to worry about gleaning, and I think that's mostly because it's a fluffy yarn. Because it's kind of fuzzy and it's got a halo, I'm not too worried about if it pills. You know, with this kind of yarn, it's to be expected. This Natural Fluff 4-ply, I believe, so it's got Surrey and cotton in it, and I think a little bit of merino. So it's a little bit different than your typical Surrey yarn, and that makes it just a little bit thicker. So this is quite a warm sweater. Also, I changed the design a little bit, so these sleeves are a little bit bigger than the final version is. But I love the color combination that I used. I think the yarn combo in this is great. It's really cozy sweater. It's got that kind of oversized cozy sweatshirt feel, which is what I was going for. And I throw this on all the time, especially when I'm trying to be more like cozy and casual. This is one of my go-tos for that. Okay, second on the list is my second version of the Prismatic Reflection Sweater. This is the solid version, and this is holding Fyberspates Cumulus in the color Pearl with Lamb Good Fibers Classic Fingering, I believe, in the colorway Nolita. So the Lamb Good Fibers has this really pretty speckling in it, and then the pearl, the Fyberspates Cumulus Pearl, gives it a little bit of a pink hue throughout. And this one, it feels a little bit more precious. You know, it's a little bit more delicate. It's definitely softer. It's a little bit thinner, so it's not quite as warm. This is one I wear going out a little bit more often. And then this also has the final sleeve version that I did. So you can see that the sleeve is a little bit narrower. And then with both of them, I have a bit of a not quite a balloon sleeve, but I do a rapid decrease right before the cuff, just because that's really my preference. In the pattern, you can do either or, you don't have to do the rapid decrease, but that's what I've done, and I just love that it cinches right to my cuff. This one is also really cozy, and this is also one I've worn a ton. I talk about this a lot on my podcast, but Fyberspates Cumulus, the Surrey alpaca, that is my favorite Surrey that I've ever used, and I try to use it whenever I can because I just love it. I love the fabric it makes with all of my garments, and it's soft, it's warm without being like crazy hot. I love Surrey because it doesn't make me itchy at all. I can wear it all day long, even if I'm a little on the warm side. Like, I'll be warm, but it won't be prickly on my skin. So it's definitely my go-to, and if you're looking for a fluffy yarn and you don't like mohair, it is totally my recommendation. And that brings us to numbers 3 and 4 on the list. I was very much in a Prismatic Reflection kick when I did this. Surprisingly, I still had yarn left over from the sweater. I had purchased 3 skeins of Lamb Good fibers in the classic fingering, and I should note that both of my Prismatic Reflection sweaters are size 2, and I'm a 34-inch bust. So I had leftover classic fingering from her in the Nolita colorway, and I just really, really loved it. So I decided to make a matching pair of socks. Now, I'm gonna preface this by saying that, especially like as I move down the list and talk about my socks are very well loved and very well worn, and so especially the older ones on the list, they're a little worse for wear maybe, but I wear my socks all the time. I will wear them in boots, I wear them out, so they get deeply loved, and that will be reflected. So I will probably pop up photos too, so you can see what they looked like when they were fresh and pretty. But this is my matching pair of socks. This is the Prismatic Reflection Sock, which is a toe-up sock. And I did that so that you could have the cabling to the exact length that you want, instead of having like a big gap before the toe. And then these have an afterthought heel, but the pattern also has a shadow wrap heel. And it's just the same subtle slipped cable technique that creates these little diamonds. And then it's got a half twisted rib for the cuff. And as you can see, I love these very much. I don't know if I will knit a lot more socks in light colors, just because, you know, I mean, we have hardwood floors and carpet. We have kind of a mix, and it's tough, right? Like, you try to keep them clean, but it's just especially noticeable when you use the lighter colored socks. And then also, I also have to be careful, because when I wear my socks after like a long day and I go to wash them, I wash them in warmer water because I want to make sure they're clean. But because of that, sometimes depending on the different socks that you might have in the same like sink, some of the dyes might run, like dye tends to bleed a little bit more with warmer water. And there was one time where I threw a few socks in without really thinking about it, and there was a deep blue pair of socks in there, and you can probably see that on this side, a little bit of that dye kind of rubbed off. It's my own fault, and it's fine. You know, it is what it is. It's a good reason for me to probably knit a new pair of these, maybe in a slightly darker yarn. But it doesn't stop me from wearing them, and the Lamb Good Fibers yarn is really nice. It's I also believe it's just a standard 75-25 merino nylon, so just a really good all-around sock yarn. I would say it's tough. I'm kind of all over the place with socks, but I probably prefer a 75-25 blend over an 80-20. But this is interesting, and I'll talk more about this later because there's a few different blends that I've used, and it kind of depends on the yarn. So that was the first pair of Prismatic Reflection Socks. And then I knit another pair for my husband Thomas because he loved it so much. And he went through my stash in my fingering selection, and he picked out his favorite color, which I didn't realize until later. The sock yarn, well, the yarn that he picked was not actually sock yarn. So this yarn is Knerd string 2-ply fingering, and the colorway Cherry Garcia, and it's a beautiful yarn. I love the tonal purple quality about it. You can see these are also extremely well loved. Same construction, I did an afterthought heel for him too. If you've been around since my very early videos, then you will recognize these as the socks that I had to redo the heels for. So this is just superwash. It's 100% superwash merino wool. And they lasted a while, but eventually he put a hole in the heel. And so I decided, the great thing about afterthought heels is you can just rip the whole thing out and the rest of your sock is unaffected, and you can replace it very easily. So honestly, I basically just do afterthought heels for Thomas, because that way he doesn't have to feel bad. If he puts a hole in it, I can easily repair it without having to do like darning on it. So what I did when he put a hole in the heel is I bought a spool of nylon, and it was kind of an experiment for me to try, where I stranded the nylon with the sock yarn. And so far the heels have held up great, no issues there, so I do think that's working. But he did I just actually noticed this a couple weeks ago, he finally put a heel near kind of like the ball of his foot. So this I will actually need to darn. Like I said, I noticed this a couple weeks ago and I haven't done it yet just because I'm not super motivated to do that, because I think at some point we might just need to decommission these. And lesson learned, which is an obvious lesson, don't use 100% superwash merino on your socks. Like if you want natural socks, then you could probably go with a merino or some sort of a wool blend, but not superwash, because it kind of takes away the ability for it to felt. And otherwise, yeah, without the nylon, you know, you're just gonna burn holes through them. So that's a lesson learned, and that's okay. He has worn these a ton, he loves them. So I might just try and find a similar color yarn in a proper sock yarn and then just knit him a new pair of these. And I think that might be the way to go. All right, next up on the list, I knit up the Moonset Tee by Ozetta. And this is with Lana Grossa Lace Seta Mulberry, and it's in the colorway Ecru. This was actually, I'm gonna move up so you can take a look at how it looks, how it fits. I knit the size 2 on this and I got perfect gauge. So I didn't really make many modifications. This was something where I was just trying to go through my stash. My friend was knitting this and I kind of had a little bit of FOMO. I really liked the design and I wanted to knit one for myself. And I realized that I had a very similar yarn weight. Now, granted, I think this calls for knitting for olive pure silk, which makes sense as a good summer yarn. You know, this is a tee. And it's a nice lightweight fiber to use. And the Lace Seta Mulberry, it's a combination of silk, alpaca, and wool. Yeah, it's merino. So it's 35% silk, 35% alpaca, and then 30% merino. So, you know, I decided to go ahead and use it because I have a bunch of this in stash that I had bought on clearance a few years back. And I kind of didn't know what to do with it. It's one of those things where I'm like, if it hadn't been on clearance, would I have ever actually purchased this yarn? It's a lovely yarn, but would I have actually bought it? You know, it's fine. Another lesson learned, but at least it was a stash buster. So I figured with the silk, it would still give a really nice drape, but this is definitely more of like a transitional garment and not a fall tee for me, because that alpaca is nice and warm. That being said, I can wear it on a day like today. Like it's a pretty cold day here, and obviously I'm indoors, but I'm actually very comfortable wearing this. And to be honest, sometimes when it's really cold out and everybody's got their heat blasting, I actually prefer kind of a warm tee like this. That way my arms keep me kind of cool and regulated, but the core of me is still very nice and toasty. I just find it to be a really good balance. So I actually do still wear this quite a bit, just not in the height of summer. But it's a really great design. I will say this pattern is not for the faint of heart. I wouldn't call it a beginner friendly pattern. I definitely think you should have a few garments under your belt before you knit this pattern, but it's a fantastic pattern. It's very well written and it's very easy to follow. It's just, there are a lot of initial steps in the beginning because you start with a few pieced items. You know, you cut your yarn a few different times and you have to seam several things before you kind of get started. And that kind of enables you to get this really nice V-neck construction in the drop shoulder. So just keep that in mind. And then in terms of modifications that I made, because my yarn was more of a woolly yarn, I couldn't just do the I-cord edge because it was just gonna curl. So I decided to do a ribbed hem and then ribbing on the sleeves, and just a little bit, just a tiny bit of ribbing. And that was just so it wasn't going to curl all the way up, because I knew that's exactly what was gonna happen if I did the exact, if I followed it exactly to pattern. I would definitely knit this again. I still actually haven't used pure silk. I've been so hesitant because when I've gone to the store and felt it, I'm like, oh, that feels so crunchy. But everybody says it's an absolute delight to work with and the finished item is so nice. My friend knit a cami with it and it's gorgeous. So I've been really wanting to work with pure silk, and I think maybe in the future I will do another version of this in the pure silk, because I think that'll be really nice to add to my wardrobe. Okay, the next item on the list is another pattern designed by me, and this was the Flocking Good Time socks, which were aptly named, designed for Flock Fiber Festival in collaboration with Hazel Knits. And this was for the Flock, the second Flock Fiber Festival in 2024. And so this was a pattern that I designed, and Wendy from Hazel Knits kitted up. And so they had special kits for this at Flock. And this was really, really fun to work on. It's loosely based off of the Flock logo, which was a bunch of different sheep in these kind of earth tone colors. And I went to Hazel Knit's store and chatted with her about the collaboration, and we picked out colors together. And I know I talk about this a lot, but let me tell you, if you want to look at colors and get color inspiration, go to Hazel Knit's store or just go to her website. They have every color you could possibly think of, and colors that aren't even in your imagination. It's just, I will never stop talking about how much I love her colors. So this is on the Artisan sock base, and these have also been very, very extremely well loved. So you can see I've worn these a ton, and this is what I wanted to talk about in terms of the different yarn bases. The Artisan sock base, I believe, is 90-10, so it's actually 90% superwash merino wool and 10% nylon. And there's something interesting where I don't typically go for 80-20s, but the 90-10 has a really nice, like, it feels quite woolly and hardy, but it also feels incredibly durable. And it does kind of soften over time, like, because it's got so much wool in it, you are gonna get more of a halo. But I actually don't mind that. I think that's actually really nice. They feel like really nice, hard-wearing socks that feel a little bit more natural than nylon-y, I guess, if that's a good description. So yeah, these are super fun. I have both versions here, the Afterthought heel version and the Shadow Wrap heel. Let me see. This was the toe up version. This was the cuff down version. And even though they're technically a little bit different, I just wear them together because no one's ever gonna know. And I just think these are super cute. All right, so at this point, you can probably tell this was the height of summer. And in the summer, I just don't really want to knit on big, heavy, woolly things. So I just started knitting socks like crazy. And so this is where the Siroc sock pattern came to be. So I was looking through my stash. I was working really hard to try and get through my stash, especially because at this point Flock hadn't happened yet, but was coming up. And so I didn't want to buy more yarn, and I wanted to work through my stash to kind of, you know, make it more acceptable for me to buy some more yarn to bring home and put in my stash. So I was looking through my sock stash because I've got lots of little balls of things left over from a pair of socks here and there. And what caught my eye was that I had another sock's worth of yarn left over from my the Cozy Knitter Advent from 2023. I had already knit up a vanilla pair of socks in that yarn, but I still had plenty left over. And I didn't want to waste it, but I didn't want to knit just another pair of vanilla socks. So I came up with this design that I thought would play well with a really busy self-striping yarn, and that is the Siroc sock pattern. So you might be looking at this and think it looks pristine, and that's because it actually, these have only been worn like twice now, and that's because I didn't finish the second sock until actually like a few weeks ago. Because I knit this one and then I was so excited about it, I wanted to see how it would look on a variegated or like crazy speckled yarn. So then the next pair I did was, the main color of this is Salty Blonde Fiber, and it's in the colorway Burn Book from her Mean Girls collection. And then the contrast colors are the Silly Goose yarns, Plump fingering in the colorway Bubblegum. And I thought it worked really well with that. You know, it's definitely a little bit more subtle, but it still works. Also, you can see that these are very well loved. I wear these a lot, and actually this yarn I find to be incredibly soft. I don't know what she does with her dyeing process, but these are very cozy and I wear these a lot. And so I did this version, and then I wanted to knit a pair for Thomas and also try it in more of a tonal version. These are in Polka Dot Sheep Tenderfoot, which is another 80/20. And I actually think this is a really pretty tonal yarn, and I also really like how the tonal yarn works with this pattern because it's also subtle, but you can very much see the texture in there, which I really enjoy. So this is these are cuff down. This is Afterthought heel. Let me see. The stripes are Afterthought heel, and then my speckled version is with the Shadow Wrap heel. And these are just both of my go-to heels. I do kind of prefer the Shadow Wrap heel, but I also love how an Afterthought heel is something that you can easily repair. So when I'm doing like sock knitting for anybody else besides me, I always do an Afterthought heel. It's just, I know that it's going to be safe and we don't have to worry about if I need to make a repair, and they don't need to feel guilty about it. So those were, even though these were kind of knit, like, I mean, technically the second one of these wasn't knit till the end of the year. These were all started and still completed before 2025, so I'm just kind of putting them all together. And I really enjoyed these, and I think these are just a really fun knit, very potato chippy, and they move really quickly. So these are not the last of my Siroc socks, and you'll see those later. And next up is another garment. Like I said, we are in the heart of summer at this point in the year of my knitting progress of 2024. And Flock was coming up quickly. And I realized that I really wanted to do a summer version of my Prismatic Reflection Sweater. And I had started and stopped a couple of different versions with some DK weight yarn that I had in stash that I was really trying to use and get through, and the colors just didn't work. I was trying to use a solid DK, but I still wanted to do the stripes, and it wasn't giving me the look that I wanted. And then on top of that, I was worried that it was just gonna be too warm with that woolly nature. So I decided to actually just go for it with a summer yarn. And so let me move up so you can see it. This is what it looks like. I love this, it's so comfortable. This is in Knitting for Olive Cotton Merino, and that is a fingering weight yarn, which I've held double. I basically did the same thing I did with the sweater where I marled. You hold them together, obviously, for the white, which is in the color cream. And then the colors that I picked, I did a little swatch, but then I knit this up and did a third stripe in a color. At first, I actually wanted to do kind of a light to dark in all of the same sort of colors, but the darkest color, it just got really lost with the motif. So I decided to kind of go back to my roots with how I did the striped sweater and do just an offset bright color here, which I think was definitely the right choice. I love the colors that I picked. This one is soft mint, this is elephant blue, and then this is lime yellow. The rest of the sweater, or the rest of the tee, is in cream. And so it's basically the same throughout. The only differences from this and the sweater is that I didn't do a folded over neckband, I just did a single. And then obviously I did short sleeves, of course, and did a short amount of ribbing here. And then I think I just did a little bit less ribbing here. I also made it more cropped because what I was planning to wear it with was either high-waisted jeans or high-waisted shorts. I was surprised at just how much I loved the cotton merino. I run warm, and so even when I'm making summer tees, I kind of always expect that I'm not really gonna wear them in the summer. So I'm never that worried about the yarn content because I'm like, well, it's a t-shirt, but I'll wear it for like transitional weather. This one legitimately I wear in the summer and I feel good about it. Now, that being said, I live in Western Washington, so we have decently mild weather. And even with the height of the summer here, the hottest days are really only for a couple of weeks, and most of the time it's okay to still wear something like this. I wore this to flock, no problem. I was super comfortable. Whereas the day before, I had worn my Moonset Tee. We went to Bainbridge and did all of that, and I was so hot the entire day. So just that difference in fiber content, this made me really excited to work with more cotton merino. And I've got a ton of like single color balls, which I need to figure out what to do with because I bought a bunch to try and figure out what striping I wanted to do. So I'm gonna think about how I can make that into some sort of maybe like a fun striped tee for this summer or next summer, I'm not sure. But if you're on the fence, I really recommend the Knitting for All of Cotton Merino. This being said, I have not really found another cotton yarn that I enjoy. I think for me, I really like a blend of merino and cotton together. Every time I've worked with a 50-50 blend, I just think it's the perfect combination. The wool gives it a little bit of springiness and takes away from that like heavy washclothy kind of feel of cotton, but the cotton makes it very soft and obviously lightweight and a little bit more breathable. And so I think it's a really good combination. This is so soft. One thing I found interesting with this in blocking is that after I blocked it, it shrunk in length. I was actually expecting it to drape a little bit because of the weight of the cotton, but I guess because of that 50-50 blend, it did the opposite. And so just keep that in mind that, yeah, it shrunk upwards and became a little bit wider. So, I mean, it's fine for this because I wanted kind of a boxy crop tee. But I will keep that in mind in the future that it will probably shrink half an inch or so depending. But yeah, it's a really great summer fabric and I love this tee. All right, we're back to socks again. So the next project on my list are the Viking socks. These aren't actually a pattern. This Viking sock, it was a motif I found in the book, I think it's 150 Scandinavian motifs or something like that. It's like a little stitch dictionary. And I was flipping through it and I saw these and thought Thomas would really like them. Turns out he did. He's really into Viking stuff. And this ended up becoming a pair of socks for me and for him because the first pair of socks that I knit, and this is such a lesson, just never do this. I was so into this that I just went ahead and knit them 2 at a time, even though I had, at this point, never knit Thomas a pair of colorwork socks. So I knit them 2 at a time in the size I typically make for him. And also on top of that, the colorwork is there's a lot of stitches in between, and I was catching floats, and that just makes everything quite a bit tighter when you've got a lot of space in between your colors. And so it cinched it in a bit, and I was almost done with the pair. I think I barely had anything left to do. And I finally decided at that point to have him try them on, and he couldn't even get it over his heel. Like he couldn't get them on. Really bummed me out, like a lot. I was so demotivated at that point that I just gave up. I put them in my project bag and I threw them in the back of my stash, and I was like, no, that's whatever. And so this was actually a while ago. And then finally, for some reason, it was summertime, and I guess because I was going through all of my knitting and thinking about what I can work on that's lightweight. I had also just done a video of my languishing whips, and obviously this was one of them, and just seeing it again after some time off, I decided to just go for it. So I put these aside, which were initially for him, started a new pair, just the one at a time, didn't do 2 at a time. And what did I do? I went up in stitch count, but I stayed with the normal needle size and had him try it on just before I put the heel in, and it was still too tight. And that's when I learned that for Thomas, I have to go up a stitch size as well as a needle size in order for it to fit him well, just based on his heel size. And so when I did that and restarted it, they fit finally. And so finally I got him his pair. And this is in the Cascade Heritage sock yarn, which is a 75-25 superwash merino nylon. So on Ravelry, it just says merino nylon. I'm thinking superwash, but then again, maybe not, because it actually does kind of pill. So I'm not actually sure. It might just be regular merino. I need to look into that because it's probably superwash, but don't quote me on that. But the colors are, so the main blue color is denim. The light blue color is anise. The ships are in the color camel, and then the white stripes are in the color limestone. So, and this also has an afterthought heel for him and a 2x2 cuff. And so his pair is 80 stitches. And I went ahead and took the 72 stitch pair, and they actually fit me decently well. I did a few extra decreases at the heel and the toe, just so those weren't too large when you're not doing the color work. But these became the pair for me. And so this sock yarn, the Cascade Heritage, it's crazy soft. Like even when I was knitting it up, I thought it was soft. When I put it in the sink to block it, I was surprised at how soft it felt. Like there's just something about this. It's incredibly soft. But the one thing I will note, and I was warned about this when I was like waxing poetic about these on my podcast, is that they do pill quite a bit. I have actually gleaned these once. So, I mean, it's not terrible. These have been worn a bunch, and I don't actually think that's too bad. But they are quite fluffy, and they, you know, they pill a bit at the heels, but that's gonna happen. So I'm not too upset about it, especially because a skein of Cascade Heritage is like $12 US, which is a lot cheaper than an indie dyed skein of yarn. So definitely a good budget-friendly sock yarn. And then also I should note that I have actually knit these 3 times. I almost forgot to mention. When my dad came to visit in October, I asked him, he came for his birthday, and I asked him if he wanted me to knit him a pair of socks. I thought about just making them, but I wanted to check with him first before I did it, because I never want to knit something for somebody and then feel this pressure to wear it if they didn't really want it. And he immediately was like, yeah, I'd love the Viking socks if you're okay with making them. And so he was here for a little over a week, and I was able to finish that pair for him in that time. So this pattern, which is not really a pattern, has been knit successfully 3 times by 3 very happy people. So I just think that's fun that we all have like matching socks. Next up on the list, and my last summer garment of the season, this is my Everyday Attitude Tee by Suzanne Sommer. This is definitely this was a pattern I kind of got influenced on because I had seen Leslie Friend from A Friend to Knit With. She had worked on a version of this in black and white, and I fell in love with it. I thought it was absolutely gorgeous. And so this had been on my list as a pattern I really wanted to make. And again, I was trying really hard to just work through stash. I had just finished another project in this yarn, which is Blue Sky Fibers Metallico. And that is actually a secret pattern that will be coming out it will be coming out this summer. But so this is the tee. I ended up having just a bunch of these colors left over, and I was trying to think of what to do with it, and I figured a striped tee would be the way to go, and I thought this could be really fun. So, and I've chatted a lot about this when I was working on it. I went back and forth on the different colors I was using. I also initially had a yellow in here, which I removed because I thought it looked like a package of Lifesavers. And I think doing that was the right call. I actually really think it's really fun now, but I think it's just a nice combination of colors, and I love the sleeve detail. It's also, I found this to be such an interesting knit because the construction was different than anything I've done before and very unexpected, but also very uncomplicated. You kind of cast on everything, including like this. You would think that this is a picked up seam when you just kind of glance at it, but you're actually knitting this all at once. And so you kind of knit all of this, and then finally, once you join here, then you're knitting in the round. The one thing that slows this down, this actually moves much quicker in the beginning when you're knitting it flat because it's garter stitch. Once you join it in the round, then you're purling every other row. So it slows down a little bit, but I mean, it's not terrible. It still moves pretty quickly. I want to show off that it's got a really cool side seam down there with slip stitches, which I think looks really fun with the striping. So this pattern, it calls for just 2 colors. Because I used 5 colors, I had to do a little bit of extra work. So I had to do a longer back than what was called for. Now that ended up not being a problem anyway, because I needed to do some modifications on the length in general. The original arm length, armhole depth was, I want to say it was something like 13 inches or 12 inches. It was something really shallow to where I was actually thinking, like, as is, it was gonna be like that on me. And I was just like, that's not gonna be comfortable at all. So I ended up needing to do a full, like, 5 stripe increase on both sides on top of the additional 5 stripes on the back in order to get the right balance. And so there is a little bit of extra depth here, but I think I would rather that over having, you know, arms that are kind of being suffocated. So I will say this didn't get a ton of wear just because I knit it kind of at the end of the summer season, and then when I got into autumn, I was just really excited to be working on woolier stuff, and I don't know, I just didn't end up wearing this too much. This is one of those where it is a, what is it? It's a silk wool alpaca blend. Okay, yeah, it's 50% alpaca and 50% silk. So it's very heavy and drapey because of both of those fibers, but it is a little bit warm. So it's not something I'm gonna wear in a super hot day, but I could see on like the cool evenings, especially here in the springtime, I suspect is when I'm gonna get a lot of wear out of this because it's still pretty chilly. But this will keep my core really warm. And it's just really fun and bright and cheerful. And then on top of that, when you do the pickup, you don't have to do any sort of like crazy bind offs or anything. You're just knitting a few rounds in stockinette and then binding off in pattern. So it's very simple, and it still gives a really nice look. Like from far away, I think it kind of looks like an I-cord bind off. It's only when you get up close that you can see that it's just a rolled hem. I think this is a really interesting pattern. It's a pattern I definitely recommend. It's a pattern I would knit again. I still actually think I'd like a black and white version. So at some point I might do that. And I actually wonder what this would be like in the Knitting for Olive cotton merino, or maybe even in the pure silk. So I think this will be a pattern that I will revisit for sure. All right, next up. So we are now starting to get into fall, and this meant that I was all about getting the fall accessories. And I am a blue sky maker, and that means that I knit a couple of patterns a year. Blue Sky Fibers sends me yarn, I design a pattern with it and release it. The pattern is mine, I own the pattern, but I get yarn support from them to do that, and then they kind of help market as well. So it's a really great relationship. This is my 3rd year doing it now. And so the first pattern of the year that I did for me, I guess, this is the Under the Ivy Beanie, and this is using Woolstock Light in the colors Driftwood, which is the kind of cream color, the beige color, and then Wild Thyme, which is the green. And this is basically just a twisted Mobius style cowl. So you knit it in a tube, you knit it all the way around, and then you do a half twist, and then you Kitchener stitch the join together, which no matter how hard I try, I can never get a super clean Kitchener join with my cowls. So obviously I always tuck that to the back. I mean, it's clean, but you can always see the seam just a little bit, you know? But it makes a really nice kind of extra crease on the front. What I like about doing the half twisted Mobius cowls is that instead of just feeling like you have like an inner tube around your neck, it gives you that depth of feeling like you've wrapped a cowl around your neck a couple of times. I really like that bulk feeling around my neck, and I like kind of that extra. So obviously, if you have watched me previously, then you are familiar with this. This one is very special to me because this motif was inspired by the book The Secret Garden, which was one of my favorite books as a kid. I really love floral motifs, and when I was working with these colors, it just made me feel, it just took me back to the idea of like a very old garden with like antique pottery and old vases and just like clay pots everywhere and just ivy crawling all around, and it made me realize that what I was envisioning in my head while I was knitting this was the Secret Garden. So the name Under the Ivy is from a passage in the Secret Garden. And so it just kind of holds a special place in my heart. And this Woolstock Light, it's a really great yarn for doing color work because it's quite toothy, but it's still pretty soft. I would say that I'm actually pretty sensitive when it comes to fibers. Like there are certain, like Peruvian Highland wool, I cannot wear. I can't put it on my skin. I immediately get itchy. I can't do mohair. Anything that's gonna give me any sort of prickle effect, I can't wear it. And when I first got this Woolstock Light, I was a little bit nervous about that because it feels a little bit rustic in that way because it's quite a toothy, woolly wool, but it is not scratchy or prickly on me at all. And because of that, I have actually worn this a ton this season. Okay, I decided that instead of just holding it up kind of awkwardly, I should just put it on, but it did not at all go with the top I was wearing, so I've got my t-shirt back on. But this, I have actually been wearing this all season, so I started wearing it in the fall, and I'm still wearing it all through the winter. It might look a little crumpled, and that is because I just keep this in my purse. Like, this is in my purse, and I put it on when I'm going out, and it's been my go-to, and I really, really love it. So this, especially for when I'm going for more of those like earthy vibes, this is definitely it. And I just really love this motif. It makes me very happy, and so this is a very, very special one in my heart. And that leads me to the next couple designs I did. You'll see this a lot with my stuff. When I really enjoy a motif, I like to see it on a few different mediums. So because I had a bunch of different yarn left of the wool stock, I decided to do a beanie version, but I did the reverse. And this is actually held double, and I decided to hold it double because this is a light fingering weight yarn. I think it's great for the cowl. You get a lot of detail and definition, but I thought it was way too lightweight and floppy for a beanie. So I decided to hold it double, and you get more of a DK weight that way. And so that is the beanie version done in the Woolstock Light. But I didn't want to stop there because I loved this motif so much. I really wanted to see what it would look like in some spin cycle that I had. A while back, I had gone to Spin Cycle and I just picked up a few skeins that I knew would be fun for beanies, and then I knew I wanted to design something, but I didn't know what, and so I'd been holding off. And I had this one set from them in the Rusted Rainbow that I had gotten a skein of the Moondrape Co. Moonspun in Dark Spruce. I just really loved the idea of pairing them together, and I thought this would be a great motif for that as sort of like your autumnal version. So you've got your like rustic version here, and then this is your vibrant but autumnal version, which, oh, I love this one. I just think this is so fun. So I modified the motif ever so slightly, like I made a slightly thinner vine just because I wanted everything to fit on your head. And then this is actually a sport weight version. So that means that there are two different weights available in the pattern. And this was another reason why I did that was because I fully recognize that this is quite a large motif. And because of that, because I want to say it's like a 32 stitch repeat or something, You don't get as many customizations with the sizes. There were only a couple of different sizes that kind of made sense for a normal head. So by having 2 different gauge options, it essentially gave you 4 sizes that you could kind of work with. And it just opened it up to a few more head sizes. So I really enjoyed having that option in there. And I have to say the Spin Cycle one in the Rusted Rainbow is, I just really love those colors. Now, I did have to do quite a bit of yarn surgery to achieve this. As you can see, it does get quite dark here, but actually right around here, it just went brown and you couldn't see anything at all. And I had to cut out tons of pieces to get it to a point where you could see. And I think I had to cut some out here as well. So there's quite a bit of that skein of Spin Cycle dyed in the wool that I had to cut out. And that was painful because if you have seen or purchased Spin Cycle yarn before, then you know how pricey it is. And to chop up a skein like that is not what you want to do if you can at all avoid it. But in the end, it was worth it because I'm really happy with the finished product. And I do wear these quite a bit. I will be honest, I wear this one more only because this DK weight version in the Woolstock Wool or Woolstock Light, it's very warm. So this is something I'm gonna wear, like if it snows outside, this is what I'm gonna put on because it's gonna keep my head nice and warm. But I really love these, and I love how the same motif can look so different just depending on your yarn choices. And yeah, this is a favorite of mine. And continuing on the beanie trend, my second pattern for, I mean, it's probably like 2.5. Well, I'd say it was like the under the Ivy beanie was like the 0.5 because this was kind of 2 patterns for Blue Sky. But the second official pattern that I did for Blue Sky Fibers this year was the Holiday Frost beanie. And I did them in 2 colors just because I had 2 different colors of this yarn. This was very much a Woolstock kind of year for me. This is knit in Woolstock North. And this is I think it's a super bulky yarn. And I love being able to get a super bulky yarn and knitting up a hat in like 2 hours. There is nothing more satisfying than knitting an entire finished object in a couple of hours and knowing that you can go outside and wear it. And it's a working garment that's going to keep you warm and also look really cute. So I have this in a few different sizes. These are actually 2 different sizes. I think this is the size 1, and that is in Thermal Frost, I believe is the color. And then this Cranberry Compote is in size 2. I really love this color. I love them both, and I feel like this is really nice for those like icy cold days. Like if it's snowing or icy, this is like such a great one to do. But I really enjoyed wearing this around the holidays, like Thanksgiving and Christmas and those, I don't know, there's just something about this deep red that that's actually why I named it Holiday Frost, because this felt holiday and this felt frosty. And so that's where the name kind of came from. This cranberry, and it's probably just because I really like the way this color looks on my skin tone. So that's probably why I'm more like, ooh, the cranberry. But also I found this like sort of reddish pom-pom, which goes really well with it and it's so cute. And then you've got the really like stark white pom-pom for this one. So these are also my like very cold day knits that I wear, but I actually keep these in the car because these are fun to throw on when you want like just a really rich, bulky beanie. And it's got a really fun geometric shape. I'm not gonna put hats on just because, I mean, I've already messed up my hair a ton changing my shirts, but the hats would be one too far. But it's got just a really fun little motif on it. It's very subtle because of how bulky the yarn is, but it also just, it knits up so fast, it's so fun. Okay, next garment on my list. You can see we are very much in fall still. Maybe not the best shirt to wear under it because I'm kind of doing green on green, but it's okay. If you have watched me previously, then you have seen this so much, then you already know the whole story. But this is my Field Day cardigan by Ozetta. Sit up so you can see how it looks. This is what it looks like. It's a really, really nice drop shoulder cardigan with a V neck. It's meant to be a little bit on the looser side, but it's, I don't know. It's just got a really fun, casual, easy fit. And then it's got nice tapered sleeves. It's just an all around really nice chunky kind of cardigan. And I mean, I say chunky, but it's DK weight. My other favorite thing about this is the yarn choice. This is using Hazelnut's Lively DK in the colorway Shanty Pants, which I just love. You already know this. This kind of started my whole green kick, and I love this yarn and pattern so much that I was willing to essentially knit it twice, because I knit about 80% of this and realized it was too big. And I had done gauge swatches, and my gauge swatches were on gauge, but then you know how it goes. And it was knitting flat. It was no difference in knitting. And it's just, I think it's just the weight of the garment in how I was knitting and just the weight in general and how it changes your gauge overall. It just ended up being just one stitch per 4 inches more. And it was just enough to tip it into the like, this is a little too big on me. And on top of that, I only had 4 skeins of this yarn, and it was Hazelnuts has this yarn available that you can buy, but these 4 skeins were on sale because they were like, it was like a special lot where the ply was a little bit different than the rest of them. How they were plied, she said that it was just basically a slightly looser ply, and she didn't want to risk people buying their normal yarn with this and having a difference in the gauge. So I had no concerns about that. I bought all 4. It was enough to be my size, which is a size 2, and just it was like going to be just enough. But then when I was at about 80%, I realized that I didn't know if I was gonna have enough yarn. And spoiler alert, I would not have had enough yarn. So I ended up ripping the whole thing out, and pretty soon after restarting it, because I wanted this so bad in my wardrobe. And so what I ended up doing was I knit the size 1 to achieve the fit of a size 2. And actually the fit is spot on for what the size 2 is supposed to fit like. So that worked out really great. And I ended up having like that much yarn left over. It was like barely, it was just like a tiny little ball. So I would not have had enough if I had kept on going with that original yarn. And then the buttons are from Fluff, which I thought was really fun, and I thought that they fit perfectly with it. The construction itself, if I didn't say, this pattern is by Ozetta, and it is pretty similar to the Moonset Tee in construction. You're kind of doing the same construction to achieve the building out of the back, and then the only difference is you're knitting this flat the whole time because you are doing a cardigan, and you've got a button band that you are knitting at the same time. I really enjoyed the pattern. I really love the knit. I love this color. It just really kicked off my green phase, and I wear this a lot, especially, you know, there's something a little bit more universal about a cardigan. Like, there are times where I'm going out and I hesitate to put on a sweater because I'm like, what if I get hot? I don't feel that way about a cardigan, because if I get hot, I just take it off and I still have something underneath and it's not a big deal. So I just find in general, this gets a lot of wear because it's one of my cardigans, but it's also a little bit more special because it's kind of a crazy color. I like color. I like vibrancy. I don't tend to do a whole lot of neutrals just because, I don't know, I think color is fun. So this is one that I can grab for and just do, I'll typically do a black shirt underneath, and I just feel like it's a really nice clean look. I wore this when Thomas and I went to go see Wicked, the actual Broadway production. And I actually got complimented on being Team Elphaba in this, so it was the perfect green to wear for that. And so now I kind of think of this as my Wicked cardigan, which I kind of love. So this is a really good one. All right, so we're still in our green phase, but we're moving into a little bit more holiday now. I had all of these different colors from Hazelnuts in Artisan Sock that I'd been eyeing for some sort of a Christmas sock. Initially, I was thinking I wanted to do a Christmas ornament sock, and I did a bunch of sketching. And what ended up coming out of it that I really gravitated toward was string lights. And so this became my Trim the Tree socks, which if you have watched me, then you are very familiar with these and you know just how excited I was about these. I bought many different string light things to go along with this because of how excited I was about my Trim the Tree socks. But we ended up doing a kit for this as well. And this is, you know, it's Hazelnut's Artisan Sock in a bunch of different colors. And it's just so fun. I wore these so much during the Christmas season. I wore them on Christmas Day and many days before and after. I will probably still continue to wear these here and there. Like, if I'm being honest, I don't know that these are just gonna be worn only for Christmas because they make me so happy. They're just so bright and playful. And I just love the colors. I love them so much. So these are cuff down. This has a shadow wrap heel. The pattern also has afterthought heel. And yeah, it looks more complicated than it is because you're never holding more than 2 colors at a time. The little reflection, the light reflection is the same color as whatever background you're on. So as long as you do a light background, then it fades in and you don't even notice the difference. These knit up really quickly. And I enjoyed this knit so much that I thought it would be nice to have a cowl version because I know not everybody likes to knit socks because it's just really tiny knitting. All right, so we've got all the green things on right now. But this is my Trim the Tree cowl, and this actually uses Hazelnut's Lively DK. So Wendy from Hazel Knits, she ended up dyeing up the same colors for the Lively DK, and she made kits for this as well. And the kits were really sweet. They came with a bunch of different fun things, including like a little light bulb themed stitch marker or stitch stoppers, and it's just really cool. So this was also something that I wore a ton around the holidays, especially, you know, we took a couple of weeks off for Christmas and New Year's, and every time we went out, I put this on and I got a few compliments on it. I think just, you know, that's the time of year where you can be a little kitsch with your holiday cheer and it's okay. And so it was really fun to wear something this bright and playful. Now this, you know, outside of like the very specific holiday time of year, will probably not get much wear because right now it would feel kind of weird for me to walk around in this. I mean, I could, I don't think it would be crazy, but it doesn't feel quite as on theme as it did a couple of weeks ago. So this will probably stay in my closet until December of next year. Okay, next up on my list is my beloved Robinia. This is a fairly recent knit that I finished, and I love this sweater so much. It might be my favorite sweater ever. I'm pretty sure it is my favorite sweater ever, and there are a lot of reasons for this. A big part of it is actually the yarn choice. I mean, the pattern itself, this is by Anne Vencel. If I didn't say, this is the Robinia by Anne Vencel. And it's an oversized drop shoulder, all over color work sweater with balloon sleeves. And it's meant to be very over dramatic. It's quite a statement piece. And the yarn that I knit this in is Illimani Amelie. In the colors, the green is Hunter, and I think the white is Bone. Yes, the white is Bone. And this yarn is crazy beautiful. It is 56% silk, 40% alpaca, and then 4% merino. There are no words to describe how amazing this yarn is. It's a blown yarn, and I think that's part of what makes it so dreamy. And so I believe that the core is actually the silk, and then obviously the blown fibers are the alpaca, which has got to be a Surrey. It's got to be a Surrey alpaca, and then merino. This is really like wearing a cloud, even with the silk, and I think it's because it's the core and not like an actual fiber. It's so lightweight, but it's very drapey. This is a bulky yarn. Like, this is a bulky weight yarn, but I do not feel like I'm wearing a bulky weight yarn. Like, you know, and I've had other sweaters on here that I've shown that are in even like Aran weight and not even quite bulky. you look at it and you can tell that it's a chunky sweater. You can tell it's a thick fiber and it's dense. This is none of those things. Like this, I kind of want to knit every sweater ever again in the future in this yarn because I'm currently in a full-on love affair with it. So let me sit up for you to see. This pattern, while there were some weird things about the sizing, the pattern and the design itself are stunning. And I think that the fit that I got is perfection. It's a dream. I absolutely love it. You have this really nice boat neck that sits perfectly because you have a series of short rows you do in the front and the back to build out the shoulders. So you don't get this, you know, like that feeling of it kind of like pulling at your neck. You don't get that at all. And it sits really nicely. And then from there, you also, yeah, like you've got a very tiny little bit of subtle ribbing here, which is just a very clean detail, very clean. And then, you know, you just knit your body as is. There's no shaping or anything in the body. And then the sleeves are super dramatic, and mine aren't even as dramatic as the original pattern. So in her pattern, she actually recommends that you add some short rows here to just like to add even more volume. I didn't do that. I just decided to omit the short rows, and I followed everything else exactly without the short rows. And you do a couple of slightly rapid decreases near the end to get that really beautiful balloon shape. And I purposely made them a little bit long so I can kind of grab. I feel like a dream when I wear this sweater. It's amazing. It's like, it's weirdly both so precious I don't want to wear it, but so dreamy that I want to wear it all the time. So fortunately, because of that, it is getting a lot of wear. But you guys, it's just a dream. And if you are debating, if you've looked at the Illimani Amelie and you're not sure because it is a little bit of a pricier yarn, not the priciest, I've seen much higher costing yarn. I fully, wholeheartedly recommend it. And I have been thinking since then of what else I can knit in that yarn because it is such an absolute dream to wear. I think I finished this in mid-November. I wear it a lot. I wear this a lot. I wear it around the house. I wear it out. It's wearing well, but you know, it's also still very new. You know, it's definitely fuzzy and you get a little bit of the fuzz on the sleeves, but nothing crazy is happening. Not yet anyway. I mean, we'll see as I wear it through the winter, especially if I'm wearing it under a jacket. That's the tricky thing. There have been a few times where I've hesitated wearing this out because when it's been a little bit colder out, you know, I've got these like big balloon sleeves and I kind of think twice before shoving them into a tight jacket. So I'm careful with what I'm wearing this to. Sometimes I will wear it to places where I know I don't necessarily have to put a jacket on. I can just like get in the car, jump out of the car and be inside again without having to worry about like walking around a bunch and getting cold. But that's such a minor detail. Absolutely love this sweater. Highly recommend it. Will worn. There's some weird sizing things. I didn't quite realize that going into it. I was just in love with this design, and so I bought it. The sizing things that are weird is the first few sizes all have kind of the same stitch counts for your cast on and like opening neck area, which I thought was a little bit strange. So just keep that in mind. I would say if you are interested in knitting this pattern, be okay with doing some math. I had to do some math because I had to shift some things around. I should note actually, this pattern, I think you're holding 3 yarns together and it's essentially a super bulky weight that you end up having. This yarn is technically bulky, but obviously I'm just holding it alone. I'm not holding it with anything. And so my gauge was, I think, 2 stitches per 4 inches less than hers was, or more, more than hers was. So obviously I had a much smaller gauge. I knit a size 3 to achieve the smallest size, and that worked out absolutely perfect for me. It ended up working out too, because my row gauge was actually spot on with hers. My pickup rate for my sleeves was actually fine. So my sleeves matched her sleeves with no issue for the size that I wanted, which was great. So it was really only in the width that I had to go up for the size. But yeah, it's just such a beautiful sweater. I get compliments on it all the time, and I just love it. I just feel like this is just the most gorgeous sweater. All right, we're almost done. We only have a few more things, and most of them are just accessories. We are fully in the holiday swing of things now, and if you watched my last few episodes, then you followed me as I knit Thomas's pizza socks up. These are actually his pizza and breadstick socks. And this is using Hazelnut's Artisan Sock. And this is not a pattern. I came up with the chart. Basically, pizza is Thomas's favorite food. It's his comfort food. It's his go-to happy food. And I just thought it would be really fun if he had a pair of pizza socks. So I came up with this chart motif for breadsticks and pizza. The pizza, you are holding 3 strands of yarn almost the entire time, which is why I decided that I didn't think it would be worth making a pattern for this, because this was such a pain in the butt to knit that I didn't want people to get this pattern and then hate me for it. So I might end up just sharing the chart. That way, if anybody wants to kind of make it for themselves, they can. But yeah, so I did that motif, and then because the pizza was such a pain to knit, I didn't want to knit it again. And also I had to go up a lot of needle sizes for this just to get the right tension. And I figured if I had this throughout the foot, he may not be able to wear them. So what I did for the rest of the foot is actually just do a 3x1. Is it 3x1? I think it's 3x1 broken rib. And then on the toe, I did a really fun checkered motif to just kind of like mimic a pizza box. And he loved these. These were such a hit. He was so excited when he opened them. I don't know if you can tell, but these have already been worn quite a bit. He kind of wore them all throughout the rest of his vacation, which was adorable. Even, so I've got future footage coming of my office being kind of remodeled. We got some new furniture in there that we had to install, and I took a really funny picture of him wearing these socks in his tennis shoes up on a ladder because he just didn't want to take the socks off. So that made me really happy. There's nothing better than seeing somebody just really love something you knit for them like that. Like, I don't even care if he wrecks these to the ground and like gets holes all through them. The fact that he loves them that much just makes me so happy. And then also another note, he said that these are his most comfortable socks that I have made him to date. And he loved the yarn. So there is something about this artisan sock, the 90-10. I think it's the extra wool. It just feels really soft and hardy. But also, I will say this is a larger stitch count for him. His normal vanilla sock stitch count is 72 stitches. I only do 80 stitches for him when I do color work. But then after the color work, I decided not to go down. I didn't want to do a weird decrease after the leg. So that's why I did the broken rib instead. But what he said was actually the little bit of extra looseness he really liked, because he felt like he had, I don't know, he said it felt a little less restrictive, and he really enjoyed that. They felt like more of like slipper socks, I guess. So I thought that was really interesting and something I'm going to keep in mind when I'm knitting him socks in the future. But this was a hit of a Christmas present, which makes me so happy. And next up on the Christmas knitting, my final pair of Siroc socks for the season. I knit so many of these, this pattern this year. I just enjoy it so much. Obviously, I designed the Siroc sock pattern with an Advent self-striping yarn in mind, and so it was only fitting that when it came time for me to want to do Advent knitting again, I would do the Siroc sock. That way it was a little bit more amplified than just a vanilla sock. And I decided to go with the Tiny Human Knits Nutcracker collection self-striping yarn base with her, the light gold mini. You guys, this yarn is so beautiful. It's so, like, these colors It's like vintage Christmas dreams. And the yarn, it feels great. I really enjoy wearing these. I've worn these a couple of times. This was my Advent, but not Advent knitting because they weren't technically Advent. It wasn't technically Advent yarn, but I used it as Advent yarn. So I basically knit a stripe a day, and I finished these on Christmas Eve. And so I've only worn them a couple of times, but I think these are socks I'm honestly just gonna wear throughout the year. I don't think I'm just gonna wear them around Christmas because they're just so pretty. Again, I did my shadow wrap heel, and this is the size medium. And I love these. These are just so pretty. And I will definitely be buying more Tiny Human Knits yarn because she does really, really great work. All right, last but certainly not least, my final knit of the year. This is my Lyon Sweater by Petite Knit. And the yarn I used for this was a really fun combination. So I had this DK weight yarn that was by Newburgh Yarn Co. And it was her Hudson DK in the colorway Coleman Red. And I had a really hard time figuring out what I was gonna do with it. My friend perfectly described it as like tomato soup red. It was just like a very bright, bold red. And I wanted to do something textured with it, but I ended up not having enough yardage for anything like that. So I ended up thinking, okay, well, if I move it into worsted, if I hold it with something else, then I can probably have enough yardage to do something textured. So I went to a yarn store to check out Fyberspates Cumulus because that is my go-to for Surrey, always, always, always. And what they had like an orangey red, which was very, very yellowy orange and really not in my kind of color range. And then they had this deep ruby red, which was quite dark. And when I held them together in the store, I was very back and forth. Part of me was like, this could be really great. And the other part of me was like, this could be absolutely hideous. But I went ahead and I debated for a while. This isn't like I just picked it up and went. Like my friend was with me. We debated a few. I put it in the window. I took photos of it. I put it away. I took it back out. I walked around. I wandered around with it. I took it to the mirror. I tried to like spin the yarns together and see. And eventually I was just like, I'm not going to know until I knit up a swatch. But I love Fyberspates Cumulus. So even if I have this, I will find a use for it. Like that is not an issue. So I decided to go ahead and buy it in the amount I would need for a sweater with no plan other than the fact that this was going to be a worsted weight sweater. So I swatched. There's this one lace motif that I have been playing around with as a potential design that I want to do. I've toyed around with it a few different ways, and the lace motif is not exactly where I want it to be yet, but and also I think it needs to be on like a fingering weight yarn. It needs to be small. I tried that on with this yarn and it didn't work, but I really enjoyed the color that it made, the like marling effect that happened when you put these two yarns together. So then I just decided to knit just a normal swatch, and I realized that like this color, the color that it made was so beautiful that texture on top of that would be too much, and then I really just wanted to let this yarn just stand on its own, and that's what I did. So I just decided to do the Petite Knit Lyon sweater, just because I thought a really basic sweater was the way to go. Just go for a really nice fit. Go with something with a really nice shoulder construction that's tailored really nicely, and let the fiber speak for itself. And so that's what I did. Let me sit up so you can see this one. So it's a little bit of a looser fit, as is most petite knit patterns. She tends to go for a more casual, relaxed fit. It's got a bit of a deep armhole, slightly tapered sleeves, which I then gave a slightly rapid decrease to on the cuff, just because I like a slightly tighter cuff when I can. This was meant to be a little bit more of a big sleeve, and I just brought it in just a little bit. Just enough to where it didn't feel overly baggy like my Monday sweater does. And the construction is really nice. You start working on the back, you build that out, and then you pick up for the shoulders, and then you pick up for the sleeves. And so it makes a really nice shoulder construction. This is such a nice detail right here. And then you do a little bit of raglan increases afterward, and that gives you a little bit of that extra room here. And then, yeah, you just knit in the round. And so it's not very complicated. There are a few steps in the beginning, but it all makes sense and it moves really quickly. I love the way the collar fits. That's the other modification I did, is I just didn't do the slip stitches at the fold, but that's minor enough. Everything else is exactly to pattern, and I was exactly on, I met stitch gauge exactly, and I was just 1 row off for row gauge, so I just kept that in mind when I was doing the length. But this is a sweater that I'm very excited to now have in my wardrobe. I just debuted this last week, so it's still very new. So I've only worn it out once. I'm actually planning to wear it out again tonight. I'm going out to dinner tonight, so this will be what I'm wearing, probably with my red lipstick, because I feel like that's a good look together. I think you got to do red with red. I also have this really beautiful red coat I bought this year, but I feel like that might be too much red, so I'll probably just do my black coat. But I'm really excited to have this in my wardrobe. I realized that I haven't actually knit myself a red sweater. Like, I've knit some red accessories, but I hadn't knit a red sweater up until this point. Like, I've kind of avoided the red yarns for a while, and I don't really know why, because I actually really like it. So it's something I want to keep in mind, that maybe I knit a couple more red garments for myself this upcoming year, or at least in the future. Maybe not this year, because I've got a lot of projects already sort of planned out, specifically designs that I have that I've already ordered yarn for, like, well in advance. But it's something I want to be mindful of, that I think I want to start working more in the like reds and purples. You saw, if you've watched some of my previous episodes, I did buy some purple yarn recently, and I'm still thinking through what I want to do with that, but I think that'll be a really nice sweater. Anyway, all this to say that this was a great pattern. Obviously, if you are looking for very beginner-friendly patterns, petite knit is the way to go. This is the only petite knit pattern I knit this year, but you know, if you've watched any of these other videos, then you know that petite knit is a staple in the knitting community, because it's reliable and you know what you're going to get, and you know, the fit is going to be pretty much guaranteed if you match gauge. So yeah, I just really love this, and I expect that I'm going to wear this a lot through the winter season. It is quite a dense fabric. Obviously it's worsted weight, and then on top of that, because I held a DK weight with a Surrey tends to be a little bit thicker than mohair, and on top of that, I think petite knit might have held like 2 fingering weights together or something like that to achieve the worsted weight. I'm not entirely sure, but I mean, I met gauge, so it's fine, but it's dense, which means it's very, very warm, but it still drapes really nicely, and I have no complaints about the fit. So I'm very, very happy with this sweater. Okay, if you stuck around until now, thank you so much for watching. I know this was a lot. It was definitely a lot to get through. It was a lot for me to go through this morning before starting this. I knew this video was going to be a big one, so I was I was like both excited about getting through it and also sort of dreading how long it was going to take and how much planning was going to be involved in it. But I'm really glad I did it, just because it's really nice to look through all of this at the beginning of the year while I'm starting to plan out what I'm going to knit and what I'm going to design for this year. Colors I want to use, yarns I really enjoyed using, maybe yarns I didn't enjoy using, thinking about specific fiber types for the garments and the time of year I wear them, you know, obviously summer tees and such, and just, you know, helping to really plan ahead, seeing what I enjoy knitting that maybe I didn't realize. Like, I knew I knit a lot of socks this year. I didn't realize I had knit 13 pairs of socks, so that's kind of funny because I didn't used to knit a ton of socks previously. So it's just really fun to see those stats and analyze yourself in more of an outside perspective of seeing what you're gravitating towards when you don't actually mean to. So I hope this was of value to you in some way, or at least just entertaining. I'd love to hear what your favorite knits of the season were, not the season, but of the year. What were the favorite things that you knit last year? What were the yarns that you really loved? What was maybe something that you wouldn't do again, or any lessons learned? I'd love to hear how your retrospectives went if you did any sort of review of your own. I hope that you are enjoying what's left of the holiday season. I mean, the holidays are over, I know, but you know, it's the new year, and so there's always a little bit of that fresh take and that excitement of starting a new year, maybe doing things a little bit differently, or just trying new things. So I just hope you're having a nice, cozy season. I hope you're having a wonderful new year. And stay tuned, because I will have some updates on my new office. I'm so happy to have that space just about done. It's mostly done. It just needs a couple of finishing tweaks, and that should be happening pretty soon. So yeah, that video should come out probably in a couple of weeks. Maybe not next week, probably the week after next, but we'll see. Thanks so much for watching. If you would like to get in touch with me, I am meeshyfrazz on Instagram and Ravelry. You can email me at meeshyfrazz@gmail.com, and you can find me at my blog, which is meeshyfrazzknits.com. Thanks so much, and I will chat with you next time.